I have to admit that Terrifier the arcade game left me feeling wanting. The character designs are terrible, the gameplay variety is too generic, and the combat and blood effects are so lackluster. So what better way to remedy this feeling than finding and letting you guys know about 20 beat-em-ups that deliver that punchy satisfaction I was looking forward to.
Perfect cover for a bank job.
Marvel Cosmic Invasion 2025. An open love letter to the Capcom Marvel fighting games of the 90s, but expanded into a massive sprawling brawler. You play as any of the huge roster of 15 heroes from Marvel. You battle across iconic locations like the Savage Land, the Helicarrier, Wakanda, etc. The gameplay is the classic 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up action, using the sprite style that mimics the classic Marvel vs. Capcom series. The combat is where this game shines, integrating special moves and hyper combos that unleash devastating superpower abilities. The mobility is also great, with air dashes, flight, and super jumps allowing you to jump into enemies and out of tough spots. The enemies are your standard variety of masked soldiers, insectoid aliens, and androids, but the boss fights are deliciously difficult. Fighting Thanos wielding the Infinity Gauntlet is no joke, as it should be.
Terminator 2D, No Fate.
Terminator 2D No Fate 2024. While most licensed games are tie-in cash grabs with a few exceptions, Terminator 2D No Fate is a true passion project. You can see it in every sprite, rendered so beautifully and meticulously and animated so smoothly. Set in the bleak future war timeline in the Terminator universe, you play as Sarah Connor and other resistance fighters battling to save the world from Cyberdyne and Skynet. The aesthetic is gritty and dark, capturing the style of the Cameron movies perfectly. The gameplay is equally deep and fun. You have your standard look and shoot, but you also have melee, combat slide, acrobatics, taking cover, and can even grab someone to use as a human shield. The levels take you through industrial areas, sci-fi research facilities, sleep office high-rises, and even sections that take place in the future ruined cityscape. Bosses are massive, weapon variety is creative, and enemy designs are varied and on point. Streets of Rage, 1991 to 2020. Perhaps the king of beat-em-up genre. I'm not recommending any one game here. I'm recommending the entire series. Streets of Rage simply never misses. You play as ex-cops like Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding, cleaning up a city overrun by the Syndicate. The setting is the neon-soaked streets of crime-ridden metropolis, viewed from a classic 2.5D perspective. The franchise is universally acclaimed for its pumping techno beats and precise gameplay loop. Combat is focused on crowd control and combos. You have your standard punches, but the grand upper and defensive specials that drain your health gives the game some strategic planning that separates it from the other button mashers of the genre. Over the 4 games, you fight through all the possible city locations, the gritty ghetto streets, nightclubs, penthouses, and so on. You smash your way through all manner of colorful and wacky punks, street rats, and other zany criminals. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge 2022. When this game dropped, it almost instantly won Best Action Game at the Game Awards, and I completely understand why. It brings you into the 1987 cartoon, and with its model-accurate pixel art, you play as either one of the 4 turtles, April, Splinter, or Casey Jones. You fight through NYC to stop series villains Krang and Shredder. It supports up to 6 players, making the screen an absolute chaotic brawl of flailing limbs, enemies, and pizza. The combat is amazingly fluid, featuring a dodge mechanic that allows you to weave through attacks and reply with counters. Each character has unique stats and moves, alongside super moves that trigger satisfying attack animations. The level variety is a trip down nostalgia lane, with the Turtle Sewer Home, the Technodrome, and Dimension X brought back from the cartoon. Even if you aren't a TMNT fan, you owe it to yourself to play this. Fight and Rage 2017. This is a modern cult classic that looks like it was pulled straight from a 90s arcade cabinet. Set in a dystopian future where mutants have enslaved humanity, you play as Gal, Ricardo, or F. Norris. The aesthetic is heavily inspired by Final Fight with its chunky sprites. It is a pure, skill-based brawler that is widely regarded by hardcore enthusiasts as having one of the best combat engines in the genre. The combat relies heavily on a parry system. If you tap toward an enemy just as you are hit, you take no damage and can counter instantly. This risk-reward system makes every encounter tense. You can perform extensive juggle combos that keep enemies in the air for seconds. The movement is both weighty and responsive. The levels feature branching paths that lead to different endings, adding to the replay value. If you're looking for something more challenging, this is the game for you. River City Girls 2 2022. Side-scroller beat-em-ups and open-world RPGs aren't two genres that I thought could ever go together, but River City Girls 2 proved me wrong. You play as Misako, Kyoko, and their boyfriends Kunio and Riki, trying to take back River City from the Yakuza. You travel back and forth between districts, buying food and accessories to upgrade stats and learning new moves from dojos. The art style is a beautiful mix of pixel art and anime cutscenes. Combat is snappy and customizable. You can equip accessories to change your properties like dealing more damage to male enemies or reviving automatically. You can also recruit defeated enemies to act as assists, jumping in to deliver a quick attack. The game involves a lot of backtracking and redoing areas, which annoys plenty of people. However, the boss fights are multi-stage spectacles with unique mechanics, such as a rhythm game section or dodging massive stage hazards.
Final Vendetta!
Final Vendetta 2022. Playing this game with its distinctive color palette and animation style, I feel like it's taken inspiration from the style of the Neo Geo, also inspired by classics like Streets of Rage and Final Fight. In Final Vendetta, you play as Claire, Miller, or Duke fighting through London to rescue a kidnapped sister. It is a strictly linear arcade experience that'll take you back to the 90s. The combat is impactful and explosive, every feeling, looking, and sounding solid and destructive. You have to master blocking if you want to survive, and being able to hit enemies while they're down is always satisfying. The levels take you through the underground, docks, and clubs. The bosses feel cheap as they have high priority on their attacks and can drain your lives quickly. If you want another punishing but rewarding game, well, this is the one for you. Dungeons & Dragons: Chronicles of Mystara 2013. This collection combines Capcom's Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara. Set in the D&D universe, you play as classes like the Fighter, Elf, Cleric, or Dwarf. It revolutionized the genre by adding deep RPG mechanics to the standard beat-em-up formula, meaning you have to manage your inventory, talk to NPCs, and manage your spell slots in between the brawling encounters. Combat is complex. You aren't just mashing attack, you're casting magic missiles, using throwing hammers, and blocking with shields. The levels are filled with secrets and branching paths based on dialogue choices. The bosses are legendary D&D monsters like red dragons and leeches. If you're an RPG fan that's thinking of trying to beat them up, I'd imagine that this game is for you. Final Fight 1989. One of the great fathers of the beat-em-up genre, you play as Hagar, Cody, or Guy, trying to rescue Hagar's daughter from the Mad Gear Gang. This game established the many tropes and mechanics we see today. The health bars, the weapon pickups, and the desperation move that drains health. The graphics were mind-blowing for 1989, featuring massive sprites that filled the screen. Compared to the other games on this list, combat is simple. You have a punch combo, a jump attack, and a grab, but the impact of these moves are timeless, especially moves like Hagar's pile driver. Movement is slow and positioning is extremely important as the enemies are relentless and can easily corner you and stun lock you into submission. This is one of those types of games that require mastery over many replays. Golden Axe 1989. I can think of many beat-em-ups that take place in a medieval fantasy setting, which just makes Golden Axe even more unique. You play as Axe Battler, Tyrus Flare, or Gilius Thunderhead, seeking revenge against the tyrant Death Adder. The setting is heavily inspired by Conan the Barbarian, which they play on well. Also, being able to ride monsters like dragons and cockatrices is so epic and fun. Combat relies on weapon range and magic. Each character has a different magic affinity. Tyrese has the strongest ranged magic with her fire, while Gilius is the best melee. The stages, I have to admit, are disappointing. Just generic rock or shantytown. They say, oh, it's on the back of a giant turtle, but there is absolutely no indication of such in the level design itself, except for the few seconds when you transition from one stage to the other, and you can kinda see the giant turtle or the giant eagle. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, 1991. This game is widely considered to be peak arcade Konami. You play as the Turtles, traveling through history to retrieve the Statue of Liberty from Krang. The game is a sprite-pushing monster that is fast, colorful, and energetic. The console port especially utilized the SNES's Mode 7 to push the artistic envelope even further. One of the coolest features is the ability to grab enemies and slam them back and forth, or even throw them into the screen, which was an awesome fourth wall break. Movement is so awesomely fluid. The Turtles really living up to the ninja moniker on this one as you sprint, long jump, slide, and roll between enemies. The level variety is unmatched, taking you from the prehistoric times to a futuristic space station and a pirate ship. The bosses are creative, including a fight against Shredder where you have to throw foot soldiers at his giant mech. The Simpsons Arcade Game 1991. It's frankly amazing that a licensed game based on a sitcom became such an arcade legend. Here, you play as Homer, Marge, Bart, or Lisa, trying to save Maggie from Mr. Burns and Smithers. The art style perfectly captures the masked groaning look with expressive cartoony animations and bright colors. Combat is simple, but the standout gimmick is the team attack. If two players stand next to each other, they can combine for a powerful move. For example, Homer and Marge turning into a human wheel. Weapons here are cartoony household items like vacuum cleaners or skateboards. Movement is standard and the screen gets very crowded. The levels take you through a diorama of Springfield as well as places like a cemetery and a dream world. The bosses include a giant bowling ball and a massive mech suit piloted by Mr. Burns. If you prefer something on the cartoony side, well, this should be on your list. X-Men Arcade 1992. If you haven't heard of this game, maybe you've heard of the infamous Welcome to Die coat that got memed around in the 2000s. You play as one of 6 X-Men, including Wolverine, Cyclops, and Storm, to stop Magneto and his forces. The arcade cabinet was famous for having a massive dual-screen setup that allowed for 6-player co-op. The combat is a very basic 2-button action, but the draw is the superpowered abilities you can pull that tosses around enemies and can clear the entire screen. Walking is slow, but the acrobatic jumps and rapid melee attacks makes the game feel faster than it really is. The levels are a bit repetitive, mostly fighting waves of sentinels in generic sci-fi corridors, city streets, and rocky ground. The boss fights are great though, with them having similar movesets to yours. It kind of feels like a 1v1 fighting game at these segments. Alien vs. Predator 1994. Capcom absolutely struck gold with attaining this license. In this game, you can play as Dutch Schaefer, one of 2 different Predators, or an original character, Lynn, fighting off a xenomorph infestation in California. It has massive, detailed sprites and fluid animations that follow Giger's vision. The setting mixes futuristic military tech with the organic horror of the alien hide. Combat is a hybrid of shooting and slashing. You have a dedicated gun button, giving a unique mix of melee and ranged combat. It is so badass playing as a Predator, cutting your way through the aliens with your shoulder-mounted turret blasting away. The screen is constantly filled with dozens of aliens that explode into their acid blood. The levels and enemies follow the design patterns of the movies to a T, making it feel so authentic and badass. The Punisher, 1993. Beat-em-ups were Capcom's bread and butter, and The Punisher is a prime example of that. You play as Frank Castle or Nick Fury, leading up the streets of New York from the Kingpin. It is very violent for its time and for being a Marvel property, featuring blood and brutal finishers. The comic book accurate style, comic-like cutscenes, and onomatopoeia words popping up during hits give it a great style. Combat introduces a gun mode. When enemies with firearms appear, Frank automatically draws his pistol. The game goes from a beat-em-up to a sort of a shooter game. You can also grapple enemies and perform giant swings or pile drivers. Weapons are everywhere, from bats to axes to flamethrowers. The levels take you from the streets of New York to a bus to the forest and Kingpin's luxury tower. Captain Commando, 1991. Set in a futuristic metro city in the year 2026, this game parodies a lot of the tropes of the 80s and 90s Commando media. You play as Captain Commando, a mummy commando, a ninja commando, or a genius baby in a mech suit named Babyhead. It has a very distinct, colorful comic book style and bright colors. Combat is fast and goofy. You can even pilot enemy mini-mechs while you can also be knocked off of. There are also cartoony tropey pickups like ray guns or giant slabs of meat. There's a run button, which has an extremely goofy animation. It is hard not to smile and have fun with this game as you run through fun stages like a circus, aquarium, museum, etc. The enemies and bosses are equally bizarre and fun. I wouldn't call this game kid-friendly, but playing it brings back some of that whimsy in your life. Double Dragon, 1987. The other father of the genre. Here you play as Billy and Jimmy Lee, martial arts masters trying to rescue Marion from the Black Warriors gang. While it looks dated now, it was revolutionary for introducing co-op play and item usage. The original arcade cabinet was seriously underpowered, the game slowing down to barely playable when there are more than 3 enemies on the screen. Combat is stiff and tactical. You have punches, kicks, and the infamous elbow smash. The elbow smash is actually broken because it defeats almost every enemy AI pattern in the game. You can pick up barrels, whips, and bats. Movement is very slow and you cannot jump very high without a specific button combination. The levels take you through a slum, a factory, forest, and a castle. The enemies and bosses feel generic now because this game codified the standards for the beat-em-up genre. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, 1993. Based on the underground comic Xenozoic Tales, this game is a cult favorite that never saw a home console port. Not to be confused with the tabletop role-playing game of the same name, here you play as Jack, Hannah, Mustafa, or Mess, living in a world where dinosaurs coexist with humans. The setting is a lush, vibrant post-apocalyptic jungle and city. The sheer radical factor of punching dinosaurs is the main draw of this game. Combat is smooth but standard. You can find firearms like shotguns and bazookas that have limited ammo but deal massive damage. There is also a mechanic where dinosaurs are neutral until attacked. If you leave them alone, they might attack the enemies instead. There are also driving sections that help break up the gameplay. That is really nice. It is a shame though that the IP is stuck in a legal limbo. More games with this theme would be great. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The Game, Complete Edition 2021. This game was lost for years due to licensing issues, but its return was celebrated. You play as Scott, Ramona, and their friends fighting the League of Evil Exes. It is a stunning tribute to retro gaming with pixel art by Paul Robertson and a chiptune soundtrack by Anna Managuchi. Combat involves leveling up your character to unlock new moves. You start with basic punches, but eventually gain counters, air throws, and tech recoveries. You collect coins to buy food that boosts your stats permanently. Movement is fluid, but feels heavy until you upgrade your speed stat. The levels are incredibly creative, ranging from a movie set to a subspace highway. I read the Scott Pilgrim comics as a teen and absolutely loved them, as well as the live-action movie and recent anime adaptations. This game absolutely brings that world to life and plays to all the strengths of the setting. Guardian Heroes 1996. The most unique game on this list, taking the aesthetic of a generic anime fantasy, combining RPG, 1v1 fighting, and beat-em-up elements into one fusion that works. You play as a group of fantasy heroes, protecting a legendary sword. The gameplay is unique because it uses a 3-lane system. You can jump between the foreground, middle, and the background planes to dodge attacks. With combat, you have a complex command input for attacks, spells, and specials like a 1v1 fighting game. As you level up, you can distribute points into stats like strength or intelligence, changing how your character plays like an RPG. You're also accompanied by an undead hero who acts as a powerful AI partner. The levels feature a branching storyline with multiple endings, meaning you only see a fraction of the game in one run. Now this is truly a game like no other. Terrifier, the arcade game, might have ticked the boxes for a beat-em-up, but this list shows that it takes way more than that to be good. Whether you're throwing foot soldiers at the screen in Turtles in Time or parrying mutants in Fight and Rage, these games have proven they stand head and shoulders above the rest.